We are in the city of Sardis. In the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 1 through 7, we have a specific information about one of the seven churches in which Sardis was very prevalent in the ancient world. But how much do you know about this city? Do you know its history? Do you know the importance of Sardis back in Asia Minor and in the biblical period? Let me give you some information, historical information about this important city of the ancient world. Sardis was the capital of the ancient kingdom of Lydia. We're not talking about the Lydia in Philippi, we're talking about the kingdom of Lydia. There were different kingdoms. And then after that, the Persians came over and they took over the area and they conquered it. But at one point, this is the kingdom of Lydia, northwest of the Anatolia or modern-day Turkey. It says, capital of the ancient kingdom of Lydia on the western coast of Asia Minor. And on the 6th century BC, before the Common Era, one of the most powerful cities of the world. And it stood on one of the alluvial hills between Mount Tumulus and the sea, about 1,500 feet above and south the Great Plain. Very beautiful area. And if you look around, you can see, eventually you can take a look at the scenery. So it's beautiful how the city was around mountaintops. And it's very significant when you understand what happened here. I am standing at the steps of the ancient temple of Artemis, Diana. As we know, Diana was widely worshipped in the Greco-Roman world. Here was no exception. It was one of the main centers of worship during a particular area in the Hellenized period and then the later Roman period. But we also have to look into the religions of Sardis, like Cybele. Let me give you some information about the goddess of this particular place, Cybele. But Cybele is the name of the great mother goddess of Anatolia, was Cybele. So when you study Asia Minor, please consider that the gods are the same, different names. Okay, so here in Asia Minor, you have Cybele and Ares, her husband, her consort, who was actually, very interesting rituals in the religion. So you have to connect the worship of Artemis, came later in the Hellenized period, and Cybele, which is one of the original gods within the area. And why is this important? We're going to connect this with Revelation chapter 1, verse 5 and 6 in a minute. It says, Cybele is the name of the great mother goddess of Anatolia, and it was considered the earth mother and the goddess of nature, of the mountains, and fertility. Attendant lions symbolize her role as goddess of the mountains, mistress of wild nature. People believed she could cure diseases, give oracles, and protect her people in war. Whenever one turned into the highlands from Phrygia, which is one of the districts in the time of the Roman Empire, there were shrines and holy places dedicated to Cybele. Now, what's interesting is Cybele and Diana are kind of connected in a weird way, but we're going to focus about Cybele in a minute. I want to go back to Artemis. They found a great temple here. If you can show a little bit about what it looks like, the temple of Artemis here in the city of Sardis, and I'm standing on the altar right here. I'm basically standing on the altar that they found in archaeology. And it's interesting because it follows kind of the blueprints from the temple service, in which you have the altar and then you have access to the inner rooms. The difference is that in the temple of Jerusalem, you have different areas of holiness. The Gentiles were in one place, the Israelites in another, the women, the Israelites, the priests, the Levites, the priests, and then the high priest, who will go into the Holy of Holies once a year. In pagan temples, that differentiation was not there, other than the priests having access to do the mystery cult rituals that they used to practice. Why is the ritual of Artemis and also Cybele important to understand? In the Greco-Roman world, specifically in Rome, they developed a particular ritual called Torahbolism. Let me make sure I have the right name here, because I want to give you this piece of information, because it's connected also with Torahbolium, okay? And it's connected with a ritual that was done in the Greco-Roman world. Let me read a little bit about it. And this will answer the question in Revelation chapter 1, verse 6, in which it says that we have been washed by the blood of Jesus, by the blood of the Messiah, by the blood of Yeshua. But when you go into the Greek, it doesn't say wash, it says released. So we have been released by the blood of Messiah. That makes more sense according to the structure of the temple service and the function and the purpose and the role of blood within the temple proper. Now, Torobolium, are ancient Roman sacrifice rituals that involve the offering of animals, particularly bulls and rams, to seek favor from deities. How would they do that? They would get a ramp and they put a bull above it. They have an altar like this one, and then they put a ramp, and underneath the ramp there was holes in the ramp, and then they would slaughter the bull or the animal. There were priests who were basically, eunuchs, and they were dancing in ecstasy, and there was a high priest of the mother goddess, Civil, that later on was transferred to one of the gods of Rome. And then once the animal was slaughtered, then the blood will come over the person who's underneath in the pit. Just like the movie Civil. Remember the movie Civil? Well, that's based on the ritual of the goddess Civil. It's the same thing. So when you understand the influences of all those pagan practices, and then you read in the book of Revelation that is addressing the 7 churches in Asia Minor, you should and must consider looking into the history, the culture, and also the religion of every single one of those 7 cities, understanding their rituals, understanding the culture, understanding their particular status of government, and then you get an idea why the book of Revelation is written in that fashion in regards to Sardis and also the other cities of the 7 churches in the book of Revelation. John understood the culture very well. And Yeshua, who's bringing the message so that John can tell the servants, understood the culture and utilized many things that happen here to convey the message that we now see as we read the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 3, about the city of Sardis. I find it amazing how Yeshua, when he's giving the message to John to tell the disciples and the servants, he is utilizing historical events, geographical locations, cultural background situations to convey the message of the condition of spiritual life of every believer in this particular city. And chapter 3, verse 3 is an example of that. I want to share with you what that is. Verse 3 says, "Therefore remember how you have received and heard and observed it, and repent. Therefore you are not on alert. I will come like a thief, and you will never know at what hour I will come against you." So sometimes when you read some articles around these verses, they give you speculation about what maybe Yeshua meant with those words. In Laodicea it talks about, "I'd rather you be cold and hot, but not be lukewarm." What does that mean? We're going to be talking about that in the next few days. And also in Ephesus, is using certain things in regards to the church in Ephesus. Here's the same thing. But in order to understand these words, you must go back in time to a historical account that I think will blow your mind. So let's look into it. The historical background of the city of Sardis is a very important one. It was one of the main cities of the Lydian Empire in a very important time. The chief of Lydia, the city of Lydia, the chief city in the empire of Lydia was Sardis. That was its capital. Okay, under a fortified spur of Mount Tumulus in the Hermus Valley, near a junction of the roads from Central Asia Minor, Ephesus, Smyrna, and Pergamum. The capital of Lydia under Croesus, which is the king here, and the seat of the governor after the Persian conquest. The Persians conquered this place, and 3 centuries later, the Romans also did it. And how do they do it? That's the key to understand Revelation 3, verse 3. It says, Sardis was famous for arts and crafts and was the first center to mint gold and silver coins. So wealthy were the Lydian kings that Croesus became a legend, that's the king, became a legend for riches. And it was said that the sands of the Pactolus were golden. Croesus also became a legend for pride and presumptuous arrogance. When his attack on Persia led to the fall of Sardis on the eclipse of his kingdom. Now, watch this. Now, the capture of the great city, this great city, the capture by Cyrus occurred and the Persians in the year 549 BC. And 3 centuries later, the Romans also took over this particular place. Now, how do they do it? They had amazing walls, protected. Remember, walls in the ancient Near East represented a figure of salvation for the city. You are inside city walls, you're saved by the king. Salvation. That's why in Jerusalem the walls were very important and they were holy to the king. So it was in the ancient world. Now, here there was a weakness in the wall. There was a crevice in one of the corners here in some of the mountains. That was a weak link for entry into the city. And it just so happened that the Persians, after they encounter the Lydian Empire's army, when he went to encounter Cyrus and they lost, when the king of the Lydian Empire came back to Sardis to try to regather his strength again, the Persians pursue him. How did they enter the city? Through that weak link in the wall in the middle of the night. And the Romans did that 3 centuries later, meaning that although the city was prosperous, was in riches, gold, mint coins, and silver coins, a great Jewish population, the letter to Revelation is trying to convey a message to the believers here to learn from the historical accounts of the city that arrogance, presumptuousness, and the perceived safety of the walls will not keep you safe from the impending judgment that will come to the world. And it will come when you least expect it, just like the Persians did it to the Lydian Empire, and later on when the Romans came and did the same and conquered the same location using the same type of strategy. Are our walls strong enough to sustain any kind of test? Are we awake? That's why Paul says, "Oh, awake, all you who slumber." You know, he's using the Thessalonians. We're going to be going there sometime soon. And we need to learn from the historical accounts and the geographical locations, the message to the 7 churches in the book of Revelation, to better understand what really Yeshua was trying to convey when he's addressing the believers in every single of the 7 churches in Asia Minor.